In the heart of West Africa, where the Atlantic wind whispers stories of empires and ancestors, two nations stand side by side, tied by blood, but split by pride. Ghana, Nigeria, two giants, two brothers, two rivals locked in a battle that's lasted over 70 years. But this war wasn't started with bullets, it began with a ball. Long before stadium lights and TV cameras. In a time when colonizers drew borders they didn't understand, the seeds of this rivalry were planted. The British ruled them both, but not the same. Ghana, then called the Gold Coast, was small, but organized, educated, intentional, a colony built to shine. Nigeria, bigger, louder, a puzzle of tribes and tongues, held together with colonial glue. From the very beginning, they were designed to be different. And from that difference came competition. In 1957, Ghana rose first. Kwame Nkrumah stood before the world and declared, "We are free, not just for Ghana, but for Africa." Nigeria watched, listened, and 3 years later, she rose too, larger in land, larger in voice, refusing to be left behind. Suddenly, two nations were running the same race, not with guns, but with pride. And no stage captured that pride like football. Because for post-colonial Africa, football wasn't just a game. It was revenge, it was resistance, it was proof that the African man could dominate the world on his own terms. The first recorded clash came in 1951 on Nigerian soil, a brutal 5-0 beatdown. The message was loud, clear, merciless. But rivalries aren't born in a single game, they are forged in fire, built through scars, insults and comebacks. Over the years, Ghana and Nigeria traded blows on the field and off it. In markets, in music, in fashion, even in food. Who had the better jollof rice? Who had the better team? Who was the true giant of Africa? On the surface, they were family. The Ghan people of Ghana and the Yoruba of Nigeria shared ancestry. Their traders laughed together. Their artists borrowed each other's rhythms. But beneath the laughter was tension. A quiet, burning need to be the best. Because when your greatest rival looks like you, speaks like you, dances like you, the fight to stand out becomes personal. And when these two nations met on a football pitch, it was never just about football. It was about history, about pain, about legacy. Ghana vs Nigeria was no ordinary match. It was a declaration, a silent, thundering scream across the continent. We are not the same. And so began a rivalry that would outlive generations. A rivalry that would destroy dreams, create legends, and ignite emotions no trophy could contain. This is not just football. This is Ghana vs Nigeria, and this is war. The flags were barely raised. The ink of independence was still wet. But even before the speeches ended and the anthems faded, a different war had already begun. Not in parliament halls, not with guns, not with boots on the ground and fire in the heart. Ghana moved first. In 1958, just a year after independence, the Black Stars were born, not just a football team, but a national mission. While others were still organizing government, Ghana was organizing a squad, a league, a future. They played with pride, they played with purpose, and above all, they played to win. By the 1960s, Ghana ruled Africa. Back-to-back African Cup of Nations titles in 1963 and 65 were more than trophies. They were statements, loud, clear, undeniable. Ghana wasn't just free, Ghana was first. The Black Stars were lightning in human form. Edward Aqua tore defenses like a wrecking ball. Osei Kofi, a wizard dribbler, didn't run. He floated. Every touch, a trick, every move, a moment. They didn't just defeat teams, they humiliated them. And Nigeria watched from behind the curtain. Too big to move quickly, too divided to strike as one. Their players were scattered, their system was still forming. On paper, they had everything: population, potential, power. But on the pitch, they were always second. Ghana dominated in friendlies, in qualifiers, in every match that mattered. Nigeria tested grass, and each loss burned like acid. In the streets of Lagos, you could feel it, unspoken ache, the sting of being a giant with no crown. And yet, something was building. While Ghana celebrated, Nigeria simmered. While the Black Stars danced, the Green Eagles steadied. In every schoolyard and back street, a new generation of Nigerians laced up their boots with one thought in mind: make Ghana pay. The insult wasn't just in the scorelines, it was in the way Ghana won. Mohamed Polo, they called him the dribbling magician. When he played Nigeria, it was theater. He didn't just beat defenders, he embarrassed them. He turned games into magic shows. He made stadiums gasp. Every time Polo danced to green shirts. A nation smiled, and another one clenched its fist. But here's the twist: Nigeria was learning. They were building academies, scouting talents, creating structure. They were biding their time. And by the late 1970s, the balance began to shift. No longer the apprentice, Nigeria started fighting like an equal. No longer chasing shadows, they began throwing punches of their own. The rivalry had evolved. No more dominance, no more easy wins. Just two nations, two giants, locked in a battle where pride was the prize and revenge was always just one goal away. Every great rivalry has a moment when the tide turns, a moment when the hunter becomes the hunted and the shadows give way to light. For decades, Nigeria had chased, watched, waited. But in 1980, everything changed. Lagos was shaken. Over 80,000 fans packed the National Stadium. Thunder in their lungs, history in their sights. It was the final of the African Cup of Nations, and Nigeria stood on the edge of everything they had dreamed of. Segun Odegbami sprinted down the wing like a man possessed, slicing through defenses with speed and swagger. Christian Chukwu anchored the midfield like a general, backing orders, breaking attacks, carrying his country on his back. And then the whistle. Full time. Nigeria 3, Algeria 0. Pandemonium, tears, roars, redemption. It wasn't just a trophy, it was vindication. The student had risen. The master had been challenged. The old order was trembling. Across the border, Ghana watched in silence. This was the same Ghana that once wore African crowns like they were birthrights. But the kingdom was crumbling. Military coups, economic collapse, football in chaos. The same fields where legends once danced were now cracked and dry. Empty stadiums, broken systems, and a generation caught in the storm. While Ghana unraveled, Nigeria built. They didn't just celebrate, they prepared, they invested, structured, trained. Their football wasn't just skill anymore, it was science. In Accra, panic grew. In Lagos, confidence exploded, and then the unthinkable happened. In the heart of Ghana, Accra Sports Stadium, Nigeria came, saw, and conquered. World Cup qualifier, mid-1980s, Nigeria 2, Ghana 1. Ghanaian fans sat frozen. Their fortress had fallen. Nigerian players roared, face to the sky, years of frustration pouring out like a flood. This wasn't just a message. This wasn't just a win. It was a message. The fear is gone. The past is over. We are no longer beneath you. But rivalries aren't fairy tales. They are never one-sided for long. Even as Ghana stumbled, they were never harmless. Even as Nigeria rose, they were never invincible. Every match still felt like a final. Form didn't matter. Rankings didn't matter. Only pride. Only payback. And as Nigeria entered the 1990s, they brought fire. Frindi George, pure lightning on the wing. JJ Okocha, a man who turned football into poetry. Sunday Olise, strength and steel in midfield. Daniel Amokachi, brute force with a finisher's touch. And then Nkwankwo Kanu, tall, graceful, untouchable. This was no longer Nigeria chasing Ghana's legacy. This was Nigeria building their own empire. But as every empire rises, an old lion awakens. Ghana wasn't finished. They were wounded, they were angry, and they were ready to fight for their soul. The next chapter wouldn't be about dominance. It would be about survival, redemption, and refusing to be erased. Because in this rivalry, no victory is forever, and no defeat is final. Beyond the roaring crowds, beyond the fireworks, the trophies, the headlines, the true fire of the Ghana-Nigeria rivalry burns everywhere. It burns in silence, in the quiet before kickoff, when a player puts on his nation's colors and feels the weight of generations, not just a jersey, but a story, a duty, a legacy carved in sweat, blood, and memory. Because in this rivalry, you don't just play for your country, you play as your country. And no one carried that burden with more grace than Abedi Ayew, the maestro, Ghana's sorcerer of the midfield. He didn't run, he glided, he didn't pass, he painted. With every flick, every shimmy, every impossible assist, he made the impossible free routine. But for Abedi, matches against Nigeria weren't just games, they were rituals. He had grown up listening to crackling radio commentaries. His father's face tense with memory, neighbors holding their breath. He knew what these matches meant long before he ever played in one. By the time he faced the Super Eagles himself, it wasn't just football, it was destiny fulfilled. Across the border, another prodigy was rising, a player just as graceful and just as dangerous. Nkwankwo Kanu, tall, wiry, almost lazy at the first glance, But then, boom, one feint, one touch, one flick of that long leg and the net rippled. Kanu was quiet, but under the surface, he bent, and whenever he faced Ghana, you could see it. A little extra bite in his dribble, a little extra sting in his finish. It wasn't just Ghana vs Nigeria anymore. It was Kanu vs Abedi, Asian vs Mikel, Polo vs Odegbami. Giants, standing not just for themselves, but for entire nations. And yet, in Europe, the lines bled. At Chelsea, Michael Essien and John Obi Mikel were brothers in arms. Same locker room, same goal, same trophies. They trained together, bled together. But when Ghana played Nigeria, everything changed. The smiles disappeared, the handshakes became stares, and friendship paused, because now they weren't playing for clubs, they were playing for home. But for some, the rivalry wasn't just in stadiums, it was in their blood. Children of both worlds, Ghanaian fathers, Nigerian mothers, or the other way round. Kids growing up caught between two flags, two cultures, two footballing giants. Some had to choose a side, and with that choice came pressure, family tension, community pride, silent expectations. One wrong move, and you weren't just switching teams, you were betraying a lineage. Even stranger were the cases of players crossing enemy lines at club level, like Edward Ansah, a Ghanaian goalkeeper who found fame in Nigeria, loved, respected, celebrated until he wore the Black Stars shirt, and in one match, the cheers turned to boos, the applause to jeers. Because no matter how long you stay, when Ghana play Nigeria, you choose. For coaches too, the rivalry is a minefield. A Ghanaian boss preparing to face Nigeria, he hears it everywhere, from the fans, the press, the government. Lose any match, just not this one. In Nigeria, selection meetings before Ghana games feel like courtroom. Every call-up is a statement, every tactical decision, a political move. Because if you lose, your name will echo, not in praise, but in blame. Because in this rivalry, careers are made and reputations are shattered. And the players, they know, they always know, this isn't just football. It is personal, it is ancestral, it is eternal. And the scoreboard will never tell the whole story. Because the real battle, the real rivalry, the one that matters most is the one fought in the heart. Cultural backgrounds beyond the pitch. The rivalry between Ghana and Nigeria has never been just about football. It's a living, breathing fire that burns through music, film, fashion, politics, and the everyday lives of millions. When the Black Stars meet the Super Eagles, something shifts in the air. Markets fall quiet, shops close early, streets that once throbbed with music and movement fall still, as if the whole nation is holding its breath. Inside crowded living rooms, across beer parlors, and student halls, people gather shoulder to shoulder. Fathers grip radios with trembling hands. Children, too young to understand tactics, still know what's at stake. It is not just a match, it's a moment that could define pride for years to come. But this rivalry isn't locked inside stadium walls. It spills into the streets, into music, into identity itself. In Accra and Lagos, Kumasi and Abuja, you will hear it everywhere. In the clatter of taxis, as drivers argue over who had the better method, Essien or Mikel. In the chants echoing through schoolyards, in the side eyes and slight grins exchanged between friends, 10 rivals for 90 minutes. And across the world, it doesn't die, it mutates. Even prayer, the most sacred act, is touched by the rivalry. In churches, in mosques, whispers rise before kickoff. God, please, not this loss, not to them. And when one side wins, celebration explodes like thunder. You see flags on balconies, you hear horns blaring for hours. And when one side of football, it's about pride. The new millennium didn't soften the rivalry, it sharpened it. In 2008, under the humid skies of Accra, Ghana and Nigeria met once more. This time, at the African Cup of Nations, the air inside the stadium pulsed with a living electricity. 1,000 invisible currents surging through every shout, every heartbeat, every prayer. When Ghana overturned the deficit to defeat Nigeria 2-1, the explosion of sound could have lifted the heavens themselves. Victory was more than progression to the next level. It was an affirmation that no matter the century, no matter the generation, the fire between these nations will never die. And yet, beyond the borders of Africa, a wider stage awaited. In 2010, Ghana carried the hopes of an entire continent to the World Cup quarterfinals in South Africa. With every triumph, each nerveless penalty, Ghana's Black Stars became symbols, not just for their nation, but for all who dared to believe that Africa could shine on the world's brightest stage. Nigeria, absent from that historic match, watched with complex hearts, part admiration, part envy, and an unspoken promise. We too shall rise, and rise they did. In 2013, under the stern yet visionary eye of Stephen Keshi, the Super Eagles reclaimed their place atop African football. With grit, flair, and unity, they stormed to the African Cup of Nations title, reigniting national pride and resetting the balance of power between the rivals. But rivalry is not simply about trophies. It's about moments that etch themselves into memories, victories and defeats that become part of the national story. No moment captured this truth more than the brutal, beautiful drama of the 2022 World Cup playoff. Over 2 agonizing legs, Ghana and Nigeria fought with the desperation of nations unwilling to be forgotten. When the final whistle blew and Ghana progressed on away goals, a silence fell over Nigeria, so heavy every heartbeat that has ever pounded through the Ghana-Nigerian story. And in the women's game too, the fire burns. Nigeria's Super Falcons, the queens of African football, and Ghana's Black Queens, ever chasing, ever daring, writing their own chapters in this ancient contest. With every sprint, every goal, every broken record. It is not just football. Wherever passion blazes, profit follows. And the Ghana-Nigeria rivalry, it became more than just blood, sweat, and goals. It became a market. In the 1960s, victories were toasted with palm wine and reported in black ink on yellowing paper. By the 2000s, every pass, every foul, every last-minute miracle was sold to millions, edited into promos, dissected by pundits, and streamed in high definition across time zones. Suddenly, football wasn't just for the heart, it was for the wallet. Stadiums didn't just rise, they rose like monuments, built not only for fans, but for investors. Ghana laid its foundations early, constructing pride brick by brick. Nigerians watched and responded with skill, with speed, with oil-funded ambition. It was no longer just we must beat them on the field. Now it was we must outbuild, outspend, outshine. Every training facility built in Tema sparked one in Calabar. Every academy opened in Abuja lit a fire in Kumasi. It became an arms race of blueprints and budgets. TV networks smelled the money first, because when Ghana played Nigeria, the world watched. Ratings exploded, presidents postponed speeches, weddings were rescheduled, and corporations, they pounced. Billboards lit up like battle banners. Choose greatness, feel the fire, unite or divide. Phones, banks, BS, they all wanted a piece of the rivalry. Not because they loved football, but because they understood its power. To be part of Ghana vs Nigeria wasn't a brand move, it was a cultural investment. When the final whistle blows and the stadium erupts into silence, when the jerseys are folded and the field lies empty, something lingers. It is not just the echo of the crowd's roar that fades into the night. It is the reverberation of a rivalry, an eternal clash between Ghana and Nigeria that goes far beyond the final whistle. This is not just a game, it's a living, breathing force, a pulse that echoes through the streets. For all their battles, for all the jests and jeers, the cheers and chants, Ghana and Nigeria are not just rivals, they are reflections. Two nations walking parallel paths, sometimes clashing, often competing, but always connected. Beneath the rivalry, there's a quiet truth. They are bound not only by football, but by the way they carry together. Both nations face their cracks in their infrastructure, straining under the pressure of growing populations, leagues that struggle to keep talents from slipping away, federations tangled in politics, promise and pain. They build academies that gleam with potential, Then watch as they falter for lack of funding. Stars are discovered, only to watch them vanish to Europe before their shine can fully bloom at home. And when the world lost their players abroad, the applause often rings hollow, for it's the foreign clubs that nurtured the glory, while the soil that birthed their brilliance is left yearning. Yet in the depth of these struggles, there's also solidarity. A Ghanaian club owner watches a Nigerian team rise on the continent and feels a mix of pride and pressure. A Nigerian scout sees a young Ghanaian shine and is reminded that excellence wears no flag. They compete, yes, but they also learn from one another. They borrow ideas, mirror strategies, push each other to be better, not just to win, but to survive, to rise. Even in the faraway European leagues, their players seek each other out. They share medals, they share meals, exchange advice, and speak in tongues only rivals understand. And when racism strikes, when ignorance casts a shadow, they do not stand as Ghanaian or Nigerian, but as brothers, as Africans, united against the same darkness. Their frustration with global football is the same: underfunded, underrepresented, underappreciated. Their dreams for their leagues are the same: sustainable, respected, celebrated at home and abroad. They know they are not just teams, they are symbols of possibility, of defiance, of Africa's unpolished, unstoppable brilliance. And so, even as they battle on the pitch, they walk the same road, two giants navigating the same storm, sometimes apart, but often side by side. Not enemies, not allies, something more powerful, eternal mirrors, each pushing the other to shine brighter. But what does a rivalry like this do to the human soul? It awakens something ancient, something beyond what statistics can measure. It breathes between the lines of a national anthem, and in the deafening silence that follows a missed penalty. The Ghana-Nigerian rivalry is not merely played. It is felt viscerally, universally, endlessly. Before kickoff, time slows. In homes, families gather around radios, screens, and prayer mats. In marketplaces, work grinds to a halt. In classrooms, lessons are postponed for pre-match debates that matter more than any syllabus. There's anxiety, not the kind that panics, but the kind that reminds you that you are alive. Heartbeats race in unison from Lagos to Tamale. Pulse monitors might as well be synchronized. When a goal is scored, the noise is not a cheer, it is an eruption, an earthquake of emotion. Babies are lifted, elders weep, flags swirl into a frenzy of color and sound. But when a goal is conceded, a hush falls, heavy as stone. Phones are turned over, group chats go silent. Pride is fragile, and here it is everything. Defeat doesn't feel like failure, it feels like loss. A national ache that seeps into street corners and settles into breakfast conversations for weeks. And yet, this rivalry teaches resilience. In Ghana, post-match morning is quiet, almost sacred. A nation retreats, reflects, replays. They dissect, analyze, and vow to rise again. In Nigeria, the pain erupts outward. Talk shows ignite, fingers point, voices rise, and then a new slogan is born. A new hope is planted. The storm passes. The drums return. It is a study in national psychology. Different responses, same passion, and always behind it all, faith. Churches overflow on match days. Mosque echo with whispered prayers for penalties. Hands tremble as are clutched beside remote controls. The divine is invoked, and victory, when it comes, is not only seen as earned, but blessed. This is not sport, this is spiritual theater. Even economists noticed productivity rises in the victorious nation, drops in the vanquished, because happiness or heartbreak travel with the final whistle. In the end, this rivalry is a masterclass in emotional truth. It teaches how to win with grace, how to lose with honor, how to carry the weight of a nation with pride, even when your legs are tired. It is sport, it is spirit, it is story, and above all, it is love. Tough, complicated, unyielding love for a flag, a people, a past, and a future.